Welcome to the Jerome McClain Show. I'm your host, Jerome McClain, and let's get into our episode.
Intelligentsia, the endem of sarcasm, the nutty professor to your whack-ass marmalade. It's T-Bone from T-Bone and Chick Brew in the morning. Now available in podcast format. Simply search for the T-Bone and Chick Brew podcast, available wherever fine podcasts are sold.
It's the year 1867. A bearded philosopher named Karl Marx sits in the dim light of the British Museum, scribbling the foundational texts of Das Kapital. He is writing about a terrifying future where every human relationship is reduced to a transaction. A world where the worker's body is raw material, where the factory owner extracts maximum value from human flesh, and where the system is designed so perfectly that the workers themselves believe it's fair. He had no idea that over 150 years later, he would describe the career of Dana White with frightening accuracy.
Dana White, president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Dana, congratulations on your first show. That's got to feel good.
Thank you very much, James. I appreciate it. We're very excited. We got a sellout crowd here, 5,000 people, revved and ready to go.
We view Dana White as the genius who saved the UFC, the promoter who took a dying sport, banned and built it into a global empire. And that's true. He did that.
There was a lot of work that needed to be done. It's easy to look back now and say, oh man, they got the UFC for $2 million. People don't really understand or know what it really took and all the work that had to go into turning this thing around.
But you had to embed you at $40 million in debt.
Right.
On the top of the $2 million that you had spent in order to, and obviously we know what it's worth now.
The only way we thought we could turn this around was getting it on free TV. And you have to understand, when we bought this, it wasn't allowed on pay-per-view.
Right.
Porn was on pay-per-view. You could buy porn. You were not allowed to buy the UFC.
Wow.
So our goal was to get it on free television. People thought we were insane and it would never happen. But at the time, reality TV was taken off.
Yes.
And it was sort of what we felt was our Trojan horse.
But through a Marxist lens, Dana White isn't a sports promoter. He is the purest modern expression of what Marx feared capitalism would become. He has perfected an economy where human bodies are commodities, where desperation suppresses wages, and where the workers themselves are convinced that exploitation is opportunity. Marx warned us that under capitalism, the relationship between owner and worker would be stripped of all humanity.
And we had a fighter who flipped out in one of the interviews, and I loved it. I said, this is going to be incredible for this fight. We're going to do this. So I worked with the production. The production team said, no, we don't like this. We shouldn't do this. I said, well, I don't give a shit what you think. This is what we're going to do, okay? So we're sitting there the night of the fight, and I told Lorenzo, watch this interview. The interview happens, it's not what I told them to do.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. I literally got up from my seat, went back and kicked the door of the truck in, and went in there and said, if you motherfuckers ever do this again, I'll fire every one of you. So I ended up firing that whole crew anyway. These are the kind of things we went through, in the early years to build it into what it is today.
And reduce to one question. How much value can be extracted before the body breaks down?
135.5 for Cameron Smotherman.
Dana White didn't just answer that question. He built a $12 billion empire on it. This is how the most powerful man in combat sports perfected the exact system Marx predicted over a century ago. The first volume of Das Kapital, Marx introduces a concept that explains why the UFC is so thrilling to watch and so brutal to be a part of. He wrote, a commodity appears, at first sight, an extremely obvious, trivial thing. But its analysis shows that it is a very queer thing, abounding in metaphysical subtleties and theological niceties. When you watch a UFC fight, what are you actually looking at? You see two elite athletes competing at the highest level of human combat. You see knockouts, you see submissions, you see blood, drama, and glory. To the average fan, it's the greatest sport in the world. But to Marx, these are commodities in their most fetishized form. In a UFC production, a fighter is never just a person. He is a product. He is a visual effect designed to trigger a biological response. Marx argued that commodity fetishism occurs when the social relationships between people are masked by exchange of objects. Think about it. When Dana White promotes a fight, we aren't seeing two workers producing value for a corporation. We are seeing two warriors battling for glory. We don't see the fighter who paid $30,000 out of pocket for training camp. We don't see the brain damage accumulating with every shot absorbed. We don't see the medical bills that will follow them for decades. We only see the knockout. The money becomes a godlike entity. The belt, the bonus, the performance of the night check, hiding the ugly reality of the labor and desperation underneath.
I'm ready to go out there. You know, I've been in this situation so many times, and I love the pressure that it brings, and I love showing off, so I can't wait to put on a performance next weekend, like it's a dangerous guy like Patty.
My week is pretty much the same, you know. When I have Kai, get him up ready, and we do his homework at night, and we review in the morning, and take him to school, and usually she's up a little bit earlier. She's been sleeping a little bit later in, so it's nice.
It's pretty crazy how he can separate the fighting from being a father and being a parent, and for being someone that never had a dad in his life. He's so gentle, he's so loving, especially having her. It's been the biggest blessing. I've seen him change so much. He's became so soft.
All I ever focus on every day when I come to this office is finding and building new up-and-coming talent, putting on the best fights that we can possibly put on, and then it's live television production and live in-house production. If I focus on those things every day, you can't mess this up. You can't mess it up.
The UFC doesn't sell fights. It sells stories. It takes two human beings with real families and real struggles and packages their conflict into a 15-second promo. The person disappears. The product remains. The sacred art of martial arts has been stripped of its soul and redesigned to satisfy a recommendation algorithm. It is the ultimate commodification. Fighting itself has become a product. Marx's theory of alienation is perhaps his most haunting critique of how capitalism breaks the human spirit. In his economic and philosophic manuscripts of 1844, he wrote, "The worker becomes all the poorer the more wealth he produces. The worker becomes an ever cheaper commodity the more commodities he creates." Now look at UFC fighters' reality. UFC fighters are not employees. They are classified as independent contractors. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate legal architecture that allows the UFC to avoid providing health insurance, retirement benefits, workers' compensation, or any of the basic protections that employees receive in virtually every other profession. A fighter trains for 3 months, pays his own coaches, pays his own nutritionist, pays his own fights. He steps into the octagon and might get knocked unconscious. He might tear a ligament. He might suffer a traumatic brain injury that rewrites the rest of his life. And the UFC's responsibility for his medical care ends when he walks out of the building.
Let's talk about some myth. People think your full force you take home like this, or maybe some millions, but it doesn't work like that. That's a myth. Let's talk about serious things. But let's talk about the first and the reality. 10,000. And if you lose, boom, I lose the fight, the first fight. What you gonna bring home? First of all, if you fight in United States, the tax is deducted straight away for your purse because you're not residents here and they don't know how much your expenses are. So they're gonna take 30% for 10,000, is already 3,000 off your pocket. Then usually 10-15% to the management. So from 10,000, before all expenses, 1 more thousand off. So we have 6 left. And then 10% maybe coach, 5,000 in your pocket. Not yet. You have a lot of other expenses to build up to the training camp, to the fight, and let's talk about this now. Then we go through all expenses around, I'm going low here. Your nutrition on your camping training, 500 for 2 months camping, maybe more than that. Food is so expensive and supplement too. Recovery, around 800, massages and saunas and everything else, maybe gym. Medicals, around 300. Extra flights, maybe 2 extra flights you wanna bring, maybe 1, so $1,000. And extra accommodation, $1,000. Let's see how much is that.
I work hard for everything I do. I work hard. Whether I get paid like shit, which Ultimate Fighter China, I was in a coach. I was a Dana White over there. I held it down, and you see Dana White talking on ESPN news that if it wasn't for me, that show would have went under, belly up. I got paid. You can't have promoters take advantage of fighters, you know, and that's just wrong. You know, UFC sold for $4 billion, 4.2, sorry. And Dana White's made more than all the fighters in UFC history combined. That's just wrong. It's just wrong. Good for him, but it's not right.
Marx argued that under capitalism, the worker is alienated in 4 ways. The worker is alienated from the product of their labor. Fighters don't owe their rights, their highlights, or even their own likeness. The UFC does. The worker is alienated from the process of production. Fighters don't choose their opponents, their fight dates, or their pay. Dana does. The worker is alienated from their fellow workers. The UFC actively prevents fighters from organizing or building solidarity. And the worker is alienated from their own human nature, reduced entirely to a record, a ranking, a commodity to be used and discarded. Marx wrote that the worker's labor becomes an object, an external existence that exists outside him, independently, as something alien to him. The fighter's pain is no longer his own. It belongs to the UFC brand. It is a raw material like coal or iron, mined from the human body and also sold to us as entertainment. The more the fighter bleeds, the more wealth the product generates. They are a cog in a machine that requires their total alienation to function.
You have to have something to bitch about, I guess, and fighters always want to make more money. Boxing has absolutely been destroyed because of money and all the things that go on. It's never going to happen while I'm here. Believe me, these guys get paid what they're supposed to get paid. They eat what they kill. They get a percentage of the pay-per-view buys, and the money is spread out amongst all the fighters.
To understand the economics of exploitation, we have to look at Marx's most important idea. He called it surplus value. It's simple. A worker produces more value than he is paid for. The difference? The surplus goes to the owner. That is how profit is made. He wrote, "The rate of surplus value is an exact expression for the degree of exploitation of labor power by capital." So let's look at the numbers. In the NFL, players receive roughly 48% of total league revenue. In the NBA, about 50%. In Major League Baseball, around 50% as well. These athletes organized, they went on strike, they demanded their fair share, and they got it. In the UFC, fighters receive somewhere between 16 and 20% of total revenue. Let that number sit for a moment. The people who actually step into the octagon, who risk concussions, broken bones, torn ligament, and permanent neurological damage, they receive less than a fifth of the money they generate. The other 80% is surplus value. It goes to the machine.
It does not here. Yeah, I know. Right? Come on, give it to him then.
Pretty good. 19.
Nice.
No.
No.
What? As soon as you put the 10, I knew we fucking lost that hand. I fucking knew we lost that hand as soon as you put the 10.
And when that machine was sold to Endeavor in 2016 for over $4 billion, a value built entirely by the fighters who bled inside the octagon, how much of that sale went to those fighters? 0.
Sorry, you want to say something?
I did. UFC President Dana White and his ownership group sold the UFC for $4 billion, according to our Darren Ravel. The $4 billion sale, that's billion with a B. I feel like we should emphasize that, is the most expensive transaction for an organization in sports history.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Has anybody ever told you you were over-opinionated? How about this one? You can talk about everything you like, but don't talk about religion. Don't talk about faith. Don't talk about politics. My name is Jerome McClain, host of Jerome McClain Show, and I want to introduce you to a show called Over-Opinionated with my friend from Southwest Virginia, Josh Scott. Josh has always been told he has been over-opinionated. He always tried to hold back these opinions, but he tried to back them up when he had to say something with facts and logic. Since he's grown up in many ways, he had to change a lot of his views and his opinions, as a lot of people should. He's not a millionaire from Fox News or CNN. He's just a hard-working, blue-collar type of guy. Give Josh Scott a shot at Over-Opinionated with Josh Scott. You can find him on patreon.com/overopinionated at 679. You can also check him out on Twitter at NRV_guy79. Over-Opinionated with Josh Scott, where he is this soft-spoken guy telling you the truth.
We talk about a lot of serious topics on this show. One very serious topic is women's health. One company that stood out to me was vslay.com, because the owner is very transparent about her own struggles in the women's health department and has great customer service, great deals, and frequent sales. You can check her out, her great customer service, products about women's health, and frequent sales at www.vslay.com. That is www.vslay.com.
If you don't like it, there's a simple solution to this problem. Go start your own MMA organization, no barrier to entry, knock yourself out, pay them whatever you want to pay them.
Not a cent, not a bonus, not even an acknowledgement. The entire value of their labor was converted into cash and handed to the owners. Marx described exactly this. He wrote, "Capital is dead labor that vampire-like only lives by sucking living labor and lives the more labor it sucks. The fighters are the living labor, and the UFC has been beating for over 2 decades. Marx's most famous commandment for the capitalist was, accumulate, accumulate. That is Moses and the prophets. He understood that capital is not a thing, but a process. It has to move. It has to grow. If it stops, it dies. The UFC has followed this commandment with religious devotion. In the early 2000s, the UFC was one of several major MMA promotions competing for fighters and fans. Pride FC in Japan, Strikeforce in California, the WEC, Bellator, Elite XC, Affliction. One by one, the UFC acquired them, absorbed them, or outlasted them.
Pride, a preeminent brand, and grow this business around the globe.
I think you have a very big announcement to make. UFC has purchased Strikeforce. Is that true?
That is true.
Question. Is WEC merging with UFC?
Yes.
Pride purchased, Strikeforce acquired, WEC absorbed, Elite XC collapsed under UFC's market pressure, Bellator slowly suffocated. Today, the UFC operates as an effective monopoly on top-level mixed martial arts. Marx warned that as capital accumulates, it centralizes. One capitalist always kills many, he wrote. And that's exactly what happened. Dana White didn't just build a company, he eliminated the competition. He created a market where the UFC is the only viable employer for elite fighters.
It's been done before. How's it worked out for other guys? Not well. Mind your business. Way that a lot of these sponsors think now and act, that because they spent some money with you, they can tell you how to run your business, live your life, how to vote, how to do this.
You ain't going for that,
You got the wrong guy. You got the wrong guy.
This is not a side effect of success. This is the engine of the business model, because when there is only one place to work, the employer sets the terms, and the workers, no matter how talented, no matter how valuable, have no leverage. Where else is a UFC champion going to go? What's the alternative? There is none, and that is by design.
I saw John Jones tweet earlier today. Sorry to start with a question about the event tonight, but I saw a tweet today that talking about the White House card and how he wasn't offered $8 over $15 million, and how he felt like the fight was worth more. So I just wanted to get your response to that, essentially.
John Jones was never fighting on the White House card.
So the tweet from John Jones says this: "Hey everyone, I wanted to address Dana White's comments from this past weekend because the truth matters to me and the fans. Dana, you were heated about why I am not on the White House card, but let's clear something up. My team and I were actually negotiating with the UFC for that fight, real negotiations. I even came down from my original number from what I was offered in return. I was lowballed. Yes, I have arthritis in my hip and it's painful, but that doesn't mean I can't fight. So, let me get this straight. If I had accepted the lowball offer, suddenly my hip would be fine and I'd be on the White House card. That doesn't make sense. I even received stem cell treatment last week to get ready for the White House card, and training camp was scheduled to start today. I was preparing."
It's not fair, man. I'm not even getting a third of what I bring. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair for any fighter. I'm speaking to everybody, even the guys that I dislike and we've had problems. I'm speaking for everybody. As a community of athletes, we're not getting paid as much. And I just have these questions. Why is it that other sport teams and stuff can get 50%?
On the side right here.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw, but this morning John Jones went on a bit of a Twitter tirade, and then you ended up deleting them. Have you seen his comments?
No.
Or he basically very heavily pushed back on you, saying there were no negotiations. And then
I never said there were no negotiations. I never said that. I said, were they talking to John Jones? They talked to everybody. Everybody was talked to.
Man, the idea of a John Jones fight seems awfully exciting right now. And John came out and tweeted, said, "Show me the money."
Cocaine isn't cheap. It's expensive. You gotta make money.
Finally, we have to look at the people who aren't on the main card. Marx spoke of the Industrial Reserve Army, a mass of desperate workers who exist on the fringes of the economy. He wrote, "The Industrial Reserve Army, during the periods of stagnation and average prosperity, weighs down the active labor army. During the periods of overproduction, it holds its pretensions in check." Translation: when 1,000 people are lined up behind you, desperate for your job, you will never ask for a raise.
If you don't like it, there's a simple solution to this problem. Go start your own MMA organization.
Every week on Dana White's Contender Series, hungry fighters show up and audition for a spot on the roster. They fight their hearts out for the chance. Just the chance to sign a contract that pays them $12,000 to show and $12,000 to win. We watch them cry when they get the contract. We watch their families celebrate. It is genuinely moving television. But that emotion is the fuel that keeps the machine running. Because for every fighter on the roster, there are thousands more in the regional circuits, on the Contender Series, in the comments begging for a shot. Dana, please give me a chance, Dana. I'll fight anyone. This is the reserve army of the UFC economy. They are the thousands of desperate bodies who make every current fighter replaceable. Marx taught us that the system needs this desperation to function. If every fighter had an alternative employer, if every fighter had bargaining power, if every fighter could walk away, the UFC's profit margins would collapse. The surplus value would shrink. The machine would slow down.
Show up and do this, you better do that. You don't have to do anything here. And if these guys want to sit down and retire right now, or anybody feels uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form with what's going on, you don't have to fight. It is all good. So if that's what Connor's feeling right now, John Jones, Jorge Masvidal, I feel you. It's not like I'm going, holy shit, this is crazy. This is nuts. Nothing is crazy and nuts right now because everything is crazy and nuts right now.
The Reserve Army isn't a flaw in Dana White's business model. It is the business model. The desperation of thousands is what makes the exploitation of hundreds possible.
Fit for us in the UFC at the time for a reality show. So the guys came in and they met with us, and I remember that day they were going to a Dodger game.
Okay.
They could not get out of this fucking meeting fast enough to go see the Dodger game. And we pitched the Ultimate Fighter to them, and they didn't love it. So they end up leaving that day. You know, the Fertittas and I get back together, and the Fertittas say, you know what we'll put up the money for this first season, which was $10 million.
Wow.
And this will be our last investment in the UFC. If this doesn't work,
we're done.
Yeah. So we reach out to Spike TV. We tell them we're going to put up the $10 million. They love that idea. So we financed the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, and The Ultimate Fighter is a smash hit.
Right.
And then the finale happens.
Dana White is not a bad person. In fact, by many accounts, he's a compelling and even charismatic leader. But that's exactly the point. Marx was never interested in whether the factory owner was nice. He was interested in what the system forced the factory owner to do. And this system requires that fighters get paid as little as possible. It requires that they have no alternatives. It requires that they believe asking for more is ungrateful. It requires a reserve army of desperate bodies to keep the wages down and the octagon full.
I want to tell you, why do you think people seem to talk about UFC fighter pay? I also would like to get paid more in my job, LOL. Listen, there aren't too many things you can talk shit about the UFC about. If you look at what we've done with the business in the last 22 years, it's incredible. Never been done, ever, the things that we've done in the fight business. You always have to have something to bitch about, I guess. And fighters always want to make more money. Boxing has absolutely been destroyed because of money and all the things that go on. It's never going to happen while I'm here. Believe me, these guys get paid what they're supposed to get paid. They eat what they kill. They get a percentage of the pay-per-view buys. And the money is spread out amongst all the fighters. If you don't like it, there's a simple solution to this problem. Go start your own MMA organization, no barrier to entry. Knock yourself out, pay them whatever you want to pay them. It's been done before. How's it worked out for other guys? Not well. Mind your business.
We aren't watching a man build a sport. We are watching a man prove that Marx was right.
Dividends.
I mean, that's just amazing.
He's out.
Conor McGregor, black trunks for the champion, Jose Aldo Jr.
Conor relaxed and smiling.
Behind every highlight reel, behind every knockout of the year, behind every championship celebration, there is a worker who wasn't paid what he was worth. And over 150 years ago, a man sitting in a dark museum told us exactly why. And the scariest part, we can't stop watching. We are the ones filling the arenas, buying the pay-per-views, clicking the thumbnails, sharing the knockouts. We are the ones providing the living labor of our attention, keeping the machine alive.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Of course, if you want to support the show, you can do so by going to www.patreon.com and getting a membership for as little as $3 a month. Again, that's www.patreon.com/The Jerome McClain Show. The Jerome McClain Show is fully listener-supported, independent media that won't lead you to tribalism. Get a membership and support independent media at www.patreon.com/The Jerome McClain Show.